I woke up at 5 a.m. on the morning of my son's wedding. The house was still silent, wrapped in that peculiar quiet that comes before a life-changing event. Sleep had abandoned me hours ago, replaced by a gnawing anxiety that I tried to dismiss as normal pre-wedding jitters. Any mother would be nervous on her son's big day, right? My name is Patricia Washington. I run a small CPA firm from my home office in Atlanta, Georgia. Nothing glamorous, but it helped pay for our son Jaden's college and covered what my husband Marcus's teaching salary couldn't quite reach. After 25 years of marriage, Marcus and I had built a comfortable life together. At least that's what I told myself. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Marcus, and padded down the hallway to my home office. The computer screen cast a blue glow across the dark room as I pulled up client spreadsheets. The numbers blurred before my eyes. Outside, the world was still shrouded in darkness, but I could picture how our backyard would look in just a few hours. White chairs arranged in perfect rows. The floral arch Marcus had built draped with the roses I'd nurtured all spring. String lights I'd checked 3 times myself. Everything had to be perfect. Our boy, our Jaden, deserved a perfect day. I had been the family's steady hand, the planner, the one who remembered dental appointments and birthdays, who made sure the bills were paid on time. Marcus was the charmer, the high school English teacher everyone adored, the one who could quote Shakespeare at dinner parties and make the room laugh. I was the foundation he leaned on, and for a long time that was enough for me. But lately something had shifted between us. It was in the way he'd stop talking when I entered a room, in the way his phone was always tilted away from me, in how he'd come home late from faculty meetings smelling of expensive perfume I didn't own. When I asked if something was wrong, he'd laugh it off. "Just stressed about the department review, honey," he'd say. I chose to believe him. What else could I do? You don't toss 25 years of marriage overboard because of a feeling. The click of the office door brought me back to the present. Jaden stood there in his pajamas, a mug of coffee in his hand. At 23, he had my practical nature, but his father's handsome features. Those dark, intelligent eyes that had made me fall for Marcus all those years ago. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, making him look exhausted. "Mom, you've been up for hours," he said. "The wedding isn't until 4 o'clock. "I just want everything to be perfect for my boy," I said, attempting a cheerful smile as I closed my laptop. "Dad's still sleeping. He left early yesterday," Jaden said with a strange note in his voice. He walked over and sat on the edge of my desk, suddenly looking much younger than his years. He said something about picking up a gift for Savannah's parents. I frowned. That was news to me. Jaden hesitated, fidgeting with his coffee mug. "Mom, can I ask you something?" I turned my chair to face him. Under the harsh light of my desk lamp, his worry was evident. "What's on your mind, sweetie?" He took a deep breath. "Do you think Savannah really loves me?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. Savannah Ellington, his fiancée, ambitious, beautiful, a young attorney from a wealthy family with political connections. On paper, she was everything we had wanted for Jaden. But I'd had my own doubts. I'd seen how her eyes would drift when Jaden talked about his passion for landscape architecture, how she checked her phone during family dinners, how she seemed more interested in Marcus's connections at the university than in Jaden's dreams of starting his own design firm. "Why would you ask that, honey? It's your wedding day." "I know, and maybe it's just last-minute jitters," he mumbled, staring into his coffee. "But sometimes when she looks at me, I feel like she's looking right through me, like I'm just a stepping stone on her way to the perfect life." He paused. "And lately, she's been spending a lot of time with Dad. They're always talking about career strategies, networking opportunities. She says he's mentoring her." I wanted to tell him about the things I had also noticed, how Marcus's eyes followed Savannah around the room, How he always found excuses to help her with her coat or refill her drink. How he knew exactly how she liked her coffee. 2 sugars and a splash of cream, without having to ask. Instead, I reached out and squeezed his hand. Wedding jitters are normal, sweetie. Marriage is a big step. It's not just jitters, Mom, he said, his voice breaking. He finally looked up at me, his eyes filled with pain. I think she's in love with someone else. My blood turned to ice. What makes you say that? Little things, he whispered. The way she lights up when Dad calls. How she always asks about him first when she comes over. I saw them in the garden yesterday just talking, and the way he looked at her, he swallowed hard. It wasn't how a father-in-law should look at his son's fiancée. I felt heat rise up my neck, but I forced my voice to stay steady. Jaden, that's a very serious accusation. I know, he said, shrugging. And I hope I'm wrong. God, I hope I'm wrong. Before I could reply, the door opened again. Marcus stood there, already dressed in an impeccable shirt and slacks, his silver-streaked dark hair perfectly combed. Well, look at my 2 favorite people, he exclaimed, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. He seemed surprised to see Jaden there. Big day, son. You should be getting ready. He turned to me. And you, Patricia, you're going to wear yourself out. Savannah just called. She's coming by around 10 on Quad to discuss some last-minute seating chart details. I watched Jaden's expression tighten. What details? He asked. Oh, you know, just making sure her parents don't sit next to your Uncle James after that political argument last Christmas, Marcus said with a dismissive wave. The Ellingtons are quite particular about these things. We should discuss it privately because of the politics and all that. Of course, Jaden said, his voice flat. We can't have the wrong people sitting together. The tension in the room was suffocating. I watched my husband and my son, and I knew deep in my soul that Jaden wasn't wrong. Something was terribly, horribly wrong. After Marcus and Jaden left my office, a cold dread seized me. I was supposed to have a final call with the caterer at 10:30, a call I'd been planning for weeks. I picked up my phone, my hand trembling slightly, and called to reschedule, claiming a family emergency. It wasn't entirely a lie. The truth was, I had cleared my entire morning. I couldn't shake Jaden's words, nor the nauseating feeling that Marcus's false cheer had provoked. Something was happening in my house today, and for the first time in 25 years, I intended to find out exactly what it was. I spent the next 2 hours pretending to be busy. I tidied the kitchen, which was already spotless. I rearranged the floral centerpieces on the dining room table. Every sound made me jump. Every passing car made my heart hammer against my ribs. I felt like an actress in a play, performing the role of the happy mother of the groom, while inside I twisted with anxiety. At precisely 10 o'clock a.m., a sleek white BMW pulled into our driveway. Savannah's car. I watched from the kitchen window as she stepped out. Even in simple jeans and a cream silk blouse, she looked like she belonged on a magazine cover. Her long blonde hair was pulled back in an elegant ponytail, diamond studs glinting at her ears. She walked up to the front door with the natural confidence of someone who knows they belong wherever they go. My heart was beating so loudly I could hear it in my ears. I crept out the back door and circled the house, crouching low behind the large hydrangea bushes that bordered our living room windows. I felt ridiculous, like a spy in my own home. But the need to know, the need to confirm my fears or dispel them, was overwhelming. Through the large bay window I could see them. Marcus had let her in, and they were standing by the fireplace, the spot where we took our family pictures every Christmas. He was pouring her a drink. I couldn't hear their words, but their body language said everything. They stood close. Too close. His hand rested low on her back. It was a casual gesture, one that could be easily explained away, but it lingered there a second too long. I clenched my hands into fists, my nails digging into my palms. 25 years we had built a life in this house. We had read stories to Jaden on that very sofa. We had hosted countless family gatherings in that room. And now my husband was standing there caressing another woman, my son's fiancée, on our son's wedding day. I was about to stand up, to storm in and confront them right then and there. I didn't care about the scene. I didn't care about the wedding anymore. I only cared about the scorching betrayal I was witnessing. But then I noticed movement in the upstairs hallway reflected in the glass. I looked closer. It was Jaden. He was standing at the top of the stairs, hidden in the shadows, watching them too. The sight of him, so still and broken, stopped me cold. This wasn't just my pain. It was his. Downstairs, things had escalated. Savannah's hand was now on Marcus's chest. She leaned into him, her head tilted back, a smile playing on her perfect lips. She said something and he laughed, a sound I hadn't heard from him in years. Light, genuine, happy. The way he used to laugh with me when we were young and everything seemed possible. In that moment, I saw my husband transform into someone I didn't recognize. Someone alive in a way he hadn't been with me for a long, long time. Then his hands were in her hair, and they were kissing. It wasn't a quick peck. It was a deep, passionate kiss, the kind you see in movies. My vision went red. A roar filled my ears. I took a step toward the house, ready to rip the door from its hinges, ready to scream until my lungs gave out. And then a hand gripped my arm. I spun around, my heart leaping into my throat. It was Jaden. He had slipped out of the house and come to find me. His face was pale, ashen, but his eyes burned with a cold, hard determination I had never seen before. "Mom, don't," he whispered, his voice strained. "Jaden, this is—" I choked on the words. I couldn't even say it. "I know what it is," he said, his voice steady, though I could see his hands trembling. "Mom, I've known for weeks." "Weeks?" The word came out as a strangled whisper. I stared at my son, the boy I had raised, who now looked at me with the eyes of a man who had seen too much. We were still crouched behind the hydrangeas, the beautiful flowers I'd been so proud of, now serving as a hiding place for the destruction of our family. Inside the house, Marcus and Savannah had moved from the fireplace to the sofa. I couldn't bear to look. "I didn't want to believe it at first," Jaden said, his voice low and urgent. I kept making excuses for them. "He's just being kind. She's just nervous about joining the family." But it kept happening. The lingering looks, the private conversations, the way they'd... He corrected himself, the slip-up a painful reminder of a life that no longer existed. The way she lit up whenever he was near. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice shaking with a mix of shock and rage. "Because I needed proof," he said, his jaw clenched. "And because..." He looked at me, his eyes much older than his 23 years. "I wanted to give them enough rope to hang themselves." He pulled out his phone. His hands shook slightly as he tapped the screen. "I hired someone." "What? Who?" I stammered. "I'm not stupid, Mom. After I saw them having lunch together a month ago, a lunch Dad told me was a faculty meeting, and she told me was an afternoon with her bridesmaids, I knew I wasn't crazy. I needed to know the truth. He handed me the phone. "I hired a private investigator." My breath hitched. "A detective? Jaden, the money?" "Don't worry about the money," he said grimly. "It was worth every cent." The first photo on the screen showed Marcus and Savannah walking into the St. Regis Atlanta. The timestamp indicated it was 3 weeks ago, a Tuesday afternoon, when Marcus was supposedly at a department retreat. The second photo showed them leaving together 2 hours later, looking disheveled and flushed. "There are 17 different occasions," Jaden said quietly as I scrolled through a gallery of betrayal. Photos of them in dimly lit restaurants across the city. Photos of them pressed against Marcus's car in a private parking lot. Photos of them laughing, holding hands, living a completely different life behind our backs. I felt sick. The sheer magnitude of the deceit was breathtaking. This wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a calculated, long-term affair. I stood up, a fresh wave of rage washing over me. "We're stopping this," I said, my voice like steel. "Right now?" "No." Jaden's voice was sharp, making me crouch down again. "Mom, trust me. I have a plan." "A plan, Jaden? This is insane. We can't just let the wedding—" "Absolutely we can. And we will." He cut in, his voice ringing with an authority I'd never heard from him before. "Mom, think about it. If we confront them now, what happens? They'll deny it. They'll twist it. Dad will say you're being hysterical, that you're misunderstanding things. Savannah will cry and play the victim. They'll turn it all back on us." He was right. I could already hear Marcus's smooth, placating voice. "Patricia, you're overreacting. She's a nervous young woman, and I was just offering fatherly advice." "So what do you suggest?" I whispered, my anger giving way to a cold, terrifying clarity. Jaden's smile was something chilling and unfamiliar. "Public humiliation," he said, the words hanging in the air between us. "Total and absolute destruction of their reputations. Legal consequences. We don't just end this, Mom. We make sure they can never ever do this to anyone else again." I looked at my son. When had he become so calculating, so ruthless? Then I looked back through the window. I saw Marcus, the man I had loved and trusted for a quarter of a century, start to unbutton Savannah's blouse on the sofa where we had built our family. And in that moment, I knew the woman I used to be, the understanding, forgiving wife, was gone. She had died right there in the dirt behind the flowers I had so painstakingly planted. "Tell me the plan," I said. That evening was one of the strangest of my life. Marcus came home acting as if nothing had happened, asking about final catering arrangements. Savannah had left hours before, and he was the picture of the loving husband and proud father. He talked about his speech for the reception, about how proud he was of Jaden. The hypocrisy was so thick I could barely breathe. I just nodded and smiled, an empty shell of myself, while inside I screamed. After Marcus went to bed, claiming exhaustion from all the wedding preparations, Jaden and I met in my home office. The door was locked, the blinds drawn. It felt like a war room, and in many ways it was. "Tell me about that detective," I said, studying a surveillance photo that turned my stomach. Jaden took a deep breath. "Her name is Angela." The name hit me like a splash of cold water. "Angela, my sister, Angela." Jaden nodded. I didn't know who else to call. I knew she was a cop for 20 years before retiring and starting her own PI agency. I knew she was smart and she'd be discreet. He looked a little sheepish. I also knew she never really liked Dad. I let out a short, sharp laugh that sounded more like a sob. My little sister, Angela. We were close, but I hadn't told her about the growing distance with Marcus. I had been too proud, too ashamed to admit my marriage might be failing. "I'll call her," I said, my voice thick with emotion. Angela answered on the second ring. "Patricia, it's past midnight. Is everything okay?" "No, Angela, nothing is okay." And then the dam broke. I told her everything, what Jaden suspected, what we had witnessed that morning, the photos. I cried ugly, choked sobs for the first time all day. She listened patiently, her voice calm and firm on the other end of the line. There was no shock or surprise, just a grim acceptance. "I'm not surprised, Patricia," she said quietly when I finished. "I've seen the way he looks at that girl. I was hoping I was wrong." "Jaden told me about the photos," I said, wiping my eyes. "What else do you have?" "More than you probably want to know." Her voice turned professional. "I've been tracking their movements for 3 weeks. They meet twice a week like clockwork at the St. Regis. He always pays in cash. They eat at restaurants he'd never take you to. Last week, he took her to Cartier. I felt that flash of rage again. Our money, the money I managed so carefully, the money that was supposed to be for our retirement, for our future. And Patricia," Angela's voice was soft, "there's more, something bigger." I braced myself, clutching the edge of my desk. "I've been digging into Marcus's financials, trying to figure out where all this cash for the hotel rooms and gifts is coming from." She hesitated. "He's been sloppy." "What did you find?" I asked, dreading the answer. There was a long pause on the line. "It's not just Savannah," she said, voice heavy. "It's not the first time. I found a series of regular monthly payments going back 15 years, always to the same person, a woman named Nicole Jenkins. The name meant nothing to me. Who is she?" I did some digging. She was a graduate student in his department when Jaden was a child. She left the program abruptly about 15 years ago. The payments started a few months after she left. Angela took a deep breath. "Patricia, she has a daughter, a 15-year-old girl named Zoe. I ran a background check. The father isn't listed on the birth certificate, but I'd bet my license that Marcus is her father." The phone felt heavy in my hand. I couldn't breathe. A daughter, an entire other child, 15 years of lies, 15 years of a double life. The secret trips, the inexplicable expenses, the emotional distance, it all clicked into horrible clarity. "I have to know for sure, Angela," I whispered. "I know," she said. "I'll handle it. But Patricia, you have to be prepared. When this drops, it's going to be a nuclear bomb." "I know," I said, my voice cold and hard. "That's exactly what we're counting on." Jaden sat silent through this revelation, his face a mask of shock and disgust. When I hung up, he looked at me with an intensity that broke my heart. "A sister," he said quietly. "I have a sister I've never met." I reached for his hand. "Jaden, I'm so sorry." He shook his head. "Don't apologize for him. Never apologize for him again." He stood up, pacing the small office. "Does this change anything? About tomorrow?" I thought about it. A 15-year-old girl out there with Marcus's eyes. An innocent caught in the web of lies her father had spun. It changed everything and nothing. "No," I said finally. "It makes it more important. This isn't just about us anymore. It's about her, too. About the truth." Jaden nodded, a grim determination settling over his features. "I'll text Angela. We need to meet first thing in the morning. Work out the details." As he turned to leave, I called out to him. "Jaden, are you sure you want to go through with this? It's your wedding day." He looked back at me, a bitter smile twisting his lips. "It was never going to be my wedding day, Mom. Not really. It was always going to be theirs." That night I lay awake beside the man I had once loved, listening to him breathe. I thought about the life we had built, the promises we had made. 25 years of memories played through my mind like a movie. Our first apartment with the leaky faucet, Jaden's birth, family vacations at the beach, Christmas mornings, and quiet Sunday afternoons reading on the porch. When had it all started to unravel? Had there been signs I'd missed? Red flags I'd ignored? Or had Marcus always been this person, this liar, this cheater, and I'd simply been too blind to see it? As dawn broke, casting a pale light through our bedroom curtains, I made a silent vow. By the time the sun set today, everything would change. The truth would finally come to light. And God help those who had spent so long hiding in the dark. The morning after discovering Marcus and Savannah's affair, I met Angela in her car parked a block away from my house. The wedding was less than 36 hours away, and I needed to maintain appearances at home. I slipped out during what should have been a final fitting for my mother-of-the-groom dress, telling Marcus I needed to pick up some last-minute items for the reception. My sister looked nothing like the image most people had of a private investigator. At 50, Angela was petite, with a crown of tight gray curls and bright, observant eyes behind stylish glasses. Before opening her own agency, she'd spent 20 years on the Atlanta police force, most of it in financial crimes. Today, she wore a simple blouse and jeans, but her professional demeanor was unmistakable. "I've got more on the money," she said without preamble as I slid into the passenger seat. "It's worse than we thought." She opened a laptop on the center console and turned it toward me. On the screen was a spreadsheet, a dizzying array of numbers and dates. "I did a full analysis of your joint accounts, your retirement funds, everything," she said, pointing to a highlighted column. "Look at the pattern. For years, Marcus had been making regular cash withdrawals. Small amounts, $500 here, $700 there, never more than $1,000 at a time, always from different branches." "I thought it was for his hobby," I said, stunned. "He always told me he was investing in rare first edition books, something that required cash transactions." Angela's mouth tightened. "His hobby was named Savannah, and before her, Nicole Jenkins. The cash withdrawals explained the hotel rooms, the expensive dinners, the gifts. The Cartier necklace I'd seen in the photos. He'd paid for half of it in cash." "But that's not the worst part," Angela said, clicking to another tab. "He's been taking loans out against your pension plan." I stared at the screen. There it was in black and white, a series of loans taken out against the retirement account I had so diligently contributed to from my small CPA firm. The account that was supposed to be our safety net, our security for old age. He had drained almost $60,000 in the last 18 months. "How?" I whispered. "He would have needed my signature." "He forged it," Angela said quietly. "I compared the signature on the loan documents to your signature on your tax returns. It's a good forgery, but it's not yours." A wave of nausea hit me. This was beyond deceit. This was theft. He wasn't just breaking my heart. He was systematically dismantling our future piece by piece to fund his sordid affairs. He was robbing me of the security I'd spent decades building, gambling with my entire future. "And Savannah?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "She's not an innocent victim," Angela said, her gaze hard. "I'll get to her, but first there's something else." She hesitated, then handed me a large manila envelope. "The preliminary DNA results came in this morning." My hands began to shake as I opened it. I scanned the page, the scientific jargon blurring until I found the conclusion at the bottom. Probability of paternity, 99.999%. I stared at the words until they were burned into my memory. Zoe Jenkins was Marcus's daughter. 15 years. 15 years of loving him, trusting him, building a life with him while he had another daughter, another family hidden in the shadows. I rested my head on the steering wheel, the cool leather against my hot forehead. I didn't cry. I was beyond tears. A strange, terrifying calm came over me. The pain was still there, a massive, gaping wound in my chest, but now it was accompanied by something else, a cold, hard resolve. Sitting in the car with my sister, that flimsy piece of paper in my hand felt heavier than a tombstone, I said quietly. It was the death certificate of my marriage, of the life I thought I had. A 15-year-old daughter, I continued, the words echoing in the silent car. How did you find her? Angela's expression was a mix of pity and professional detachment. It started with the payments. Once I had Nicole Jenkins's name, it wasn't hard to locate her. She lives just 2 towns over, Marietta area. 20 miles, I whispered. For 15 years, he had been living a secret life a short drive away. How many times had he told me he was working late? How many business dinners had he attended? How many weekend conferences had he gone to? My mind spun as I mentally reviewed years of excuses and lies, each one now taking on a new, sinister meaning. I drove by the house yesterday morning, Angela continued, her voice soft. I posed as a market researcher. Nicole opened the door, and behind her, I saw the girl, Zoe. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Patricia, she's the spitting image of him. The same eyes that first drew you to him all those years ago. The same smile. She's unmistakable. I imagined an innocent teenager caught up in all this. A sister my son never knew he had. The thought was so surreal, so monstrous, that I couldn't fully process it. My family wasn't just broken. It was a fraud. A carefully constructed lie that I had unknowingly helped maintain for more than half my life. Does the mother, Nicole, know about me? About Jaden? I asked. I can't say for sure, Angela admitted. But the way she lives, nice house in a good school district, but no high-powered career, it's clear Marcus is her primary financial support. She has every reason to keep things quiet. He wasn't just paying child support, I said, my voice hardening. He was funding her whole life. With my money, our consulting money, our joint savings, the money he stole from our retirement. The betrayal was so deep, so layered. I felt like I was drowning. It was a systematic plunder of my life's work, my trust, and my future. I handed the DNA report back to Angela. Put it with the rest of the evidence, I said, my voice stripped of emotion. The shock was so profound it had short-circuited my ability to feel anything but a cold, heavy emptiness. I thought about Zoe. What kind of man tells his daughter he can't acknowledge her? What kind of man raises one son in the light while keeping another child hidden in the dark? The cruelty, not just to me and Jaden, but to this innocent girl, was staggering. And what about Savannah? I asked, needing to shift my focus, to latch onto a target for the anger that was starting to melt the ice in my veins. Angela nodded, her expression hardening again. Right, Savannah. Let's talk about the fiancée. She turned the laptop back to me and opened a new file. She's not just sleeping with your husband. She's been embezzling funds from her law firm. The words took a moment to register. Savannah, the picture-perfect attorney, the golden girl with the sterling pedigree, a thief? She's a junior partner at Morris, Ellington, and Payne, Angela explained, displaying documents that looked like internal financial reports. Her father is a founding partner, which probably explains how she got away with it for so long. She's been inflating expense reports, creating fake invoices for non-existent consultants, and siphoning the money into a private account. They aren't large amounts each time, but it's steady. In the last year alone, she's stolen over $200,000. I gasped. $200,000? And I can trace some of that money directly to gifts for Marcus, Angela said, showing me a bank transfer, followed by a credit card statement that showed the purchase of a $1,000 watch from a high-end men's boutique. She was stealing from her law partners, including her own father, to buy gifts for her lover, who was stealing from his wife to buy gifts for her. It was the most perfectly disgusting circle of deceit I'd ever seen. So Savannah wasn't just a homewrecker. She was a criminal, a thief, and she was about to marry my son, bringing her corruption and lies into the heart of what was left of my family. The numbness in my chest vanished, replaced by a white-hot fury. This wasn't just about a broken heart anymore. This was about protecting my son. This was about justice. This was about making sure these two people faced the consequences for every lie, every dollar, every broken promise. The knowledge of Savannah's embezzlement added a dark, criminal layer to the already stunning betrayal, I said, my voice barely controlled. It changed everything. This was no longer just a messy, heartbreaking domestic drama. It was a conspiracy of fraud and theft perpetrated by the two people who should have been closest to us. "How did you get all this?" I asked Angela, pointing to the damning financial documents on her laptop screen. We were still in her car, the air thick with the smell of conspiracy and stale coffee. "Savannah isn't as smart as she thinks," Angela said with grim satisfaction. "She got careless. And I have friends on the police force who were willing to pull some strings when they heard the story." She pointed to the screen. "She was moving the money through a shell corporation she set up using her mother's maiden name. It was amateur hour. My buddy on the economic crimes unit took one look at these patterns and knew exactly what he was seeing." I thought of Savannah's parents, the Ellingtons, her father, the respected judge whose courtroom I'd once sat in during a tax case for a client, her mother, Catherine, who chaired the board of the Atlanta Symphony. They moved in circles where reputation was everything. They believed their daughter was a shining star on the rise, marrying into a good, stable family. They had no idea their golden girl was a thief, and the stable family she was marrying into was a house of cards built on lies. The public humiliation was going to destroy them, too. For a fleeting instant, I felt a pang of pity for them. They were innocent collateral damage in this disaster. But that feeling was quickly extinguished by the fire of my own betrayal. "So let me get this straight," I summarized, the words tasting like venom. "Marcus is stealing our retirement money to buy gifts for his mistress, and Savannah is stealing from her firm to buy gifts for Marcus, her lover, who is also her future father-in-law." I shook my head in disbelief. "This is movie stuff. This is fiction." "It gets better," Angela said, a wry twist to her lips. "Some of the money Marcus took out of your pension plan, he invested in a sure-thing real estate deal Savannah recommended to him." "Let me guess," I said, my voice dripping sarcasm. "The deal fell through." "The deal never existed," Angela confirmed. "The money went straight into that secret account of hers. She was stealing from him, too. He was so blinded by his own ego and infatuation that he never even saw it." I had to laugh. It was a bitter, joyless sound. My brilliant, charming husband, the man who always thought he was the smartest person in the room, was being conned by a 29-year-old embezzler. It was almost poetic. We spent another hour going over the evidence Angela had collected. She had everything: bank statements, surveillance photos, cash-paid hotel receipts, forged loan documents, and now a full criminal file on Savannah's activities that was ready to be handed to the prosecutor. And of course the DNA report, the irrefutable proof that cemented 15 years of deceit. I looked at the file, the neat tabs and organized pages that represented the complete demolition of my life. 25 years of marriage reduced to a stack of incriminating documents on the passenger seat of my sister's car. Suddenly, a wave of exhaustion washed over me, so deep it felt like a physical weight pressing on my chest. "Angela, can we do this?" I whispered. "Can we really stand up in front of 300 people and do this to our family?" Angela reached over and put her hand on my arm. Her grip was firm, reassuring. "Patricia, listen to me," she said, her voice serious. "What other option do you have? If you confront them in private, they will lie. They will manipulate you. They will turn Jaden against you. They will deny. Deny until you start thinking you're the crazy one. I've seen it 100 times. She was right. I knew she was right. Marcus was a master of manipulation. He could charm his way out of anything. This way, she continued, there is no escape. There is no room for lies. There is only the truth presented in front of everyone they tried to impress. This isn't just about revenge, Patricia. It's about consequences. Savannah has to face jail time. Marcus has to be held accountable, not just for the cheating, but for the financial fraud he committed against you. This is the only way to make sure the lies stop forever. I took a deep breath, the stale air of the car filling my lungs. I thought of Jaden, his pale, determined face. I thought of Zoe, the daughter I never knew. I thought of the 25 years I had given to a man who had been lying to me since the beginning. You're right, I said, my voice clear and firm again. It's the only way. I started the car. Let's go. We have a wedding to prepare for. We spent the rest of the day finalizing our plan with military precision. Angela had already arranged for the audio-visual equipment to be connected to the large projection screen we had rented for the reception. She would arrive early on the wedding day, disguised as a member of the catering staff. Her small remote control would be synced to her laptop, which contained all the evidence neatly organized into a devastating presentation. I had my own role to play. I had prepared the divorce papers with my attorney a week prior, something I had kept secret even from Jaden. They were signed and notarized in a sealed envelope that would go into my clutch purse. I also had a flash drive with copies of every piece of evidence Angela had gathered. One way or another, my marriage would officially end that day. There was no going back. I wasn't just planning a confrontation. I was planning the first day of the rest of my life. When I returned home that afternoon, Marcus was in the backyard, directing the setup of the wedding arch. He looked handsome and distinguished in his casual clothes, his silver-streaked hair catching the sunlight. For a brief, disorienting moment, I saw the man I had fallen in love with all those years ago, the brilliant graduate student who had quoted poetry to me under starlight, who had promised me a lifetime of honesty and devotion. The disconnect between that memory and the reality of who he really was, a liar, a thief, a man leading a double life, made me physically dizzy. "There you are," he called, walking over to kiss my cheek. "Did you find what you needed?" I forced a smile. "Everything's taken care of." "You seem tense," he observed, his hand on my shoulder. "Don't worry so much. Tomorrow will be perfect." I looked into his eyes, the eyes that had lied to me for decades, and felt nothing but a cold, hard resolve. "Yes," I agreed. "It will be exactly what everyone deserves." That evening, Jaden and I met one final time in my home office to go over the details. He seemed calmer now, almost serene in his determination. "Are you sure about this?" I asked him, wanting to give him one last chance to back out. "It's your wedding day." "Mom," he said quietly, "I've been sure since the moment I saw them together. They're frauds, both of them. They deserve whatever comes their way." I studied my son's face, looking for any hint of doubt or hesitation. I found none, only a steely resolve that mirrored my own. "What about after?" I asked. "Have you thought about what comes next? For you, I mean." He shrugged. "I'll figure it out. Maybe I'll finally start that landscape architecture business I've been dreaming about. The one Savannah always called a cute hobby." I reached out and squeezed his hand. "I'm so sorry, baby. You deserved better than this." "So did you, Mom," he said simply. "So did you." Later that night, Angela called with one final piece of information. She had arranged for 2 police officers to be present at the wedding, plainclothes detectives from the white-collar crimes division who would be ready to take Savannah into custody once the evidence was presented. "Are you sure this is necessary?" I asked, whispering into my phone from the bathroom so Marcus wouldn't hear. "Absolutely," Angela replied. "The embezzlement charges are solid. Her firm is already aware and has authorized the arrest. Besides, having officers there will keep things from getting out of hand when everything blows up." I thought about that, about the chaos that would ensue when our carefully constructed bomb detonated in the middle of our picture-perfect garden wedding. "What about Marcus?" I asked. "The financial fraud he committed against you is primarily a civil matter," Angela explained. "The divorce proceedings will handle that. But don't worry. His career and reputation will be destroyed just as thoroughly as if he were led away in handcuffs." After hanging up, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at my reflection. The woman looking back at me was a stranger, harder, colder, more determined than the Patricia Washington who had spent 25 years being the perfect wife and mother. That woman was gone. In her place was someone new, someone who had been forced to learn, in the most painful way possible, that sometimes the only way forward is through the fire. I went through the motions that evening, making small talk with the out-of-town relatives who had already arrived, checking on last-minute details with the wedding planner, and even sharing a glass of wine with Marcus on the porch as if nothing was wrong. "To our son," he toasted, his eyes crinkling with what appeared to be genuine pride. "And to us, 25 years and counting." I clinked my glass against his, a smile frozen on my face. "To the truth," I replied. "May it always come to light." He looked momentarily puzzled, but then laughed it off. "Always the philosopher," he teased, patting my knee. That night I lay awake beside him, listening to his steady breathing. How many nights had I lain here, believing I was sleeping next to a man who loved me? How many mornings had I woken up beside him, never suspecting that he was living a double life, a triple life if you counted Savannah? The betrayal was so complete, so all-encompassing, that it had rewritten my entire history. Every memory, every anniversary, every moment of what I had thought was happiness was now tainted with the knowledge of his deception. Tomorrow, I would take back my life. Tomorrow, the truth would finally be revealed. And God help those who had spent so long hiding in the dark. The morning of my son's wedding dawned with a cruel perfection. Clear blue skies and golden sunshine that seemed to mock the storm raging inside me. I stood at my bedroom window watching the caterers arrive, their white vans lining our circular driveway. Florists bustled about the garden, making last-minute adjustments to the floral arch. Everything looked exactly as I had planned it. Beautiful, elegant, perfect. Except it was all a lie. I dressed methodically, slipping into the champagne-colored dress I'd spent weeks selecting. My hands trembled slightly as I fastened my pearl necklace, a 25th anniversary gift from Marcus. It felt like a collar around my throat. "You look beautiful," Marcus said, appearing behind me in the mirror. He placed his hands on my shoulders, and it took every ounce of self-control not to flinch away from his touch. "Thank you," I replied, my voice hollow. "We should head downstairs. People will be arriving soon." The next few hours passed in a surreal haze. I smiled at relatives, approved the final table settings with the wedding planner, and even helped Marcus with his tie, my fingers brushing against the silk fabric as I imagined tightening it around his neck. Every interaction was a performance, every polite word a lie. Angela arrived early, disguised as a member of the catering staff. Only I would recognize my sister beneath the black uniform and cap pulled low over her eyes. We exchanged a brief glance as she wheeled audio-visual equipment toward the reception area. She gave me an almost imperceptible nod. Everything was in place. At 3:30 p.m., guests began taking their seats in the rows of white chairs on our lawn. Judge Ellington and his wife, Savannah's parents, sat in the front row opposite where Marcus and I would sit. They looked regal and proud, completely unaware that their daughter was about to marry my son while sleeping with my husband. "Patricia," Mrs. Ellington, Catherine, called, waving me over. "Everything is simply magnificent. You've outdone yourself." I forced a smile. "Thank you, Catherine. We want it to be special." "Savannah is so blessed to be joining your family," she said, patting my hand. "Marcus has been such a wonderful mentor to her." I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. Yes, he's been very involved. At 3:45, I slipped away to find Jaden. He was in his childhood bedroom, standing before the mirror in his tuxedo. He looked handsome and heartbreakingly young. "Are you ready?" I asked softly, closing the door behind me. He met my eyes in the mirror. "I've never been more ready for anything in my life." I walked to him, straightening his bow tie. "Once we do this, there's no going back. Our lives will never be the same." "Our lives haven't been the same since I hired Angela," he said. "At least this way we get to control how it ends." I touched his cheek, feeling a fierce, protective love surge through me. "I'm so sorry, baby. This should have been a happy day." "It will be, Mom," he said, his voice calm and resolute. "Just not in the way we expected." At 4 p.m. sharp, the string quartet began to play. I took my seat beside Marcus in the front row, my purse clutched tightly in my lap. Inside was the small remote control Angela had given me and the sealed envelope containing the divorce papers. Jaden took his position at the altar, looking solemn and composed. The bridesmaids processed down the aisle in their lavender gowns, followed by the flower girls scattering rose petals. And then Savannah appeared. She was breathtaking in her designer gown, its delicate lace catching the afternoon light. Her golden hair was swept up beneath a cathedral-length veil, her makeup flawless. She looked like a princess from a fairy tale, the perfect bride. I felt Marcus stiffen beside me, his breath catching. I glanced at him and saw naked desire in his eyes as he watched his lover walk down the aisle toward his son. Savannah's eyes scanned the crowd, a practiced smile on her lips. Then her gaze found Marcus in the front row. For a split second, a look passed between them. A look of shared secrets, of triumphant conspiracy. They thought they had won. They thought they were just minutes away from cementing their perfect, deceptive future. The officiant began the ceremony with words about love, commitment, and fidelity. The irony was suffocating. I watched Savannah and Jaden exchange vows they didn't mean, promises already broken 100 times over. My stomach churned with every lie that left their lips. Finally, the officiant reached the critical moment. He smiled benevolently at the crowd. "If anyone here has any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now, or forever hold your peace." A silence fell over the 300 guests. This was the moment. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought it might break through. I could feel everyone's eyes on us. I took a slow, deliberate breath. Then I stood up. The moment I rose, a collective gasp ran through the crowd. The air, which had been filled with the soft melodies of the string quartet and the warm afternoon breeze, suddenly became thick and silent. All heads turned toward me. Marcus grabbed my arm. "Patricia, what are you doing?" he hissed. "Sit down. You're making a scene." I shook his hand off as if it were a venomous snake. I looked past him, my eyes fixed on Jaden, who stood at the altar, his face pale but resolute. Then I looked at Savannah, whose radiant smile had frozen into a mask of confused horror. "I'm sorry, everyone," I said, my voice clear and surprisingly steady. It carried across the silent garden. I apologize for the interruption, but I believe the officiant asked if there was any reason this marriage should not proceed. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. And yes, I do have a reason, a very serious one. A wave of murmuring swept through the crowd. I saw Judge Ellington begin to rise from his seat, an expression of thunderous indignation on his face. "Mrs. Washington, what is the meaning of this?" he boomed. "The meaning, Judge Ellington," I said, turning to face him, "is that your daughter is about to marry my son under false pretenses, and I believe you and everyone else gathered here today deserve to know the truth." I pulled the small remote control from my purse. My thumb hovered over the single red button. "The truth?" Marcus sputtered, his face flushing crimson. "Patricia, you've lost your mind. You're embarrassing our son." "Am I, Marcus?" I asked calmly, turning my gaze back to him, my voice dropping to an icy calm. "You're the one who has embarrassed our son. You and your mistress." With that, I pressed the button. Behind the altar, the large screen that was supposed to show a slideshow of Jaden's baby photos sprang to life. The first image that appeared was a crisp surveillance photograph of Marcus and Savannah locked in a passionate kiss in our living room, the one Jaden and I had witnessed just the day before. The crowd erupted. There were screams, gasps, people standing up to get a better look. I saw Catherine Ellington bring a hand to her chest, her face ashen. "But that's not all," I continued, my voice somehow rising above the chaos. "You see, this wasn't just a one-time mistake. This has been going on for months." The screen changed. A new photo appeared. Marcus and Savannah entering the St. Regis Atlanta, the timestamp clearly visible. Then another and another. A collage of their secret meetings, their clandestine lunches, their lies exposed for all to see. Savannah stammered, trying to deny it, but her voice was lost in the uproar. Marcus was standing, shouting, "This is fake. Those are photoshopped. Patricia is having a nervous breakdown." "Am I, Marcus?" I asked quietly. "Then perhaps you can explain this." The screen changed again. This time it displayed bank statements. My finger on a close-up photo pointed out the suspicious cash withdrawals, the forged signatures on the pension plan loan documents. A Cartier receipt for a $15,000 necklace flashed on the screen, followed by a photo of Savannah wearing that same necklace at her bachelorette party. The noise from the crowd began to diminish, replaced by a stunned, horrified silence. This was no longer just a cheating scandal. It was something darker. "My husband has been systematically stealing from our family's retirement savings to fund his affair," I announced. "And his mistress, the woman about to marry my son, has also been busy." The next slide showed the evidence of Savannah's embezzlement from her law firm. The fake invoices, the bank transfers. I could see her colleagues in the fourth row, their faces shifting from confusion to pure fury. And then I delivered the final, devastating blow. "But the best part," I said, my voice turning to ice, "the true heart of the deceit that has defined my marriage is that my husband's lies didn't start with Savannah." The DNA test results filled the screen. The words, "probability of paternity, 99.999%, were displayed in huge, bold letters. Below was a photo of a pretty, smiling 15-year-old girl. "This is Zoe Jenkins," I said, my voice trembling with 15 years of repressed pain. "She is Marcus's daughter, a daughter he has kept hidden from me and his own son for her entire life." The silence that followed was absolute. 300 people staring at the evidence of a betrayal so complete, so devastating, that even the most seasoned gossips were left speechless. And in that perfect, terrible silence, I watched the world I had known for 25 years burn to the ground. The silence was broken by a single sharp sob. It came from Savannah, who staggered, her face a ghastly white against the pure white of her wedding dress. Then she collapsed onto the ground in a heap of lace and shattered dreams. That single sound broke the spell. The garden erupted into chaos. People were yelling, pointing, pulling out their phones to record the disaster. Catherine Ellington ran toward her fallen daughter while Judge Ellington stood frozen, his face a mask of disbelief and utter humiliation. Marcus froze for a moment, his face a kaleidoscope of rage, panic, and mounting horror. He looked from the screen to me, to the stunned faces of his friends and colleagues. He was trapped. There were no lies, no smooth words that could talk his way out of this. His carefully constructed world had been publicly and irrevocably demolished. Then, he did the only thing a coward could do. He ran. He bolted, shoving his way through the stunned crowd, knocking over a tray of champagne glasses as he scrambled toward the parking area. But Angela was waiting for him. My sister, still in her catering uniform, stepped out from behind a large oak tree bordering our property. As Marcus ran past, she put out her foot. It was a perfectly executed trip. Marcus fell hard, hitting the manicured lawn and sliding for a few feet in his expensive wedding suit. "Going somewhere, Marcus?" Angela asked casually, walking over to where he lay sprawled and gasping. By then, Jaden had left the altar and was beside me, his arm firmly around my shoulders. Savannah was back on her feet, supported by her sobbing mother, and pointed a shaking finger at me. "You!" she shrieked, her voice high with hysteria. "You planned this! You planned this whole thing to ruin my life!" "No, Savannah," Jaden said, his voice cold and clear, cutting through her hysterics. "You ruined your own life. You and him." He gestured toward Marcus, who was now being helped up by Angela. "Let go of me," Marcus demanded, trying to pull his arm free from my sister's firm grasp. "Can't do that, Marcus," Angela said. "You see, I'm a licensed private investigator, and I have reason to believe you have committed multiple felonies, including financial fraud." She looked over her shoulder. "But my business right now is with her." Two uniformed police officers were walking calmly through the parting crowd. They weren't here for Marcus's fraud. That would be a civil matter for my lawyer to handle. They were here for Savannah. "Savannah Ellington?" one of the officers asked, his voice quiet but authoritative. Savannah's eyes went wide with terror. "No," she whispered. "You are under arrest on suspicion of embezzlement and wire fraud," the officer continued as his partner took her arms and gently applied handcuffs. The click of the cuffs closing was the loudest sound I had ever heard. I saw Savannah's face crumble as the realization hit her that this was not just public humiliation. This was not just a canceled wedding. This was real. There were going to be real legal consequences. Her life as she knew it was over. As the police led a sobbing Savannah away, her parents watched in stunned horror. The photographers who had been hired to capture a fairy tale were now capturing the fall of a prominent family, their flashes popping relentlessly. Judge Ellington finally found his voice. "This is outrageous," he sputtered, advancing toward me. "I'll have those officers' badges. I'll have your sister's license. You'll do nothing," Angela cut in, her voice cool and professional. "Your daughter has been stealing from her law firm for over a year. The evidence is ironclad, and her partners are already aware. Unless you want to face charges for obstruction of justice, I suggest you find her a good criminal defense attorney instead." The crowd began to disperse. Some left quickly, not wanting to be part of the disaster. Others lingered, whispering in shocked huddles, their phones still held high, recording everything. In the midst of the chaos, I finally felt my strength leave me. My knees buckled, and I would have fallen if Jaden hadn't caught me. "It's over, Mom," he whispered. "It's finally over." I looked around at the ruins of the perfect day I had planned. It was a mess. It was a nightmare. But for the first time in months, I felt like I could finally breathe. 1 year later, I stood in the kitchen of my new townhouse, stirring a pot of Sunday gravy. The space was smaller than my old home, cozier, filled with only the things I had chosen to keep after the divorce. No ghosts lingered in these rooms. No memories haunted the corners. The divorce had been swift and brutal. With the mountain of evidence Angela had gathered, Marcus didn't even try to fight. In the settlement, I received the house, which I promptly sold, and a significant portion of his assets as compensation for the fraud he had committed against our retirement funds. It wasn't a victory. It was restitution. Savannah, facing overwhelming evidence, took a plea deal. She was sentenced to 2 years in a minimum security prison and ordered to pay back every cent she had stolen. Her family's reputation was shredded. The last I heard, Judge Ellington had resigned his position, citing health concerns. Marcus's fall was quieter but no less complete. He lost his tenured position at the university, his reputation, and the respect of everyone he knew. He moved to another state, and from what I heard, he rarely showed his face in public. He had become a cautionary tale in academic circles, the professor who destroyed his career for a student half his age. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and went to answer it. Jaden stood there, a shy smile on his face. Behind him was a slender teenage girl with dark, intelligent eyes. Marcus's eyes. "Mom," Jaden said, "you remember Zoe?" I nodded, stepping aside to let them in. "Of course, come in, both of you. Dinner's almost ready." This was the most complicated part of the aftermath. Zoe Jenkins. 2 weeks after the wedding, I had received a letter from Nicole Jenkins, Zoe's mother. She apologized for the pain her past relationship with Marcus had caused and said that Zoe, having learned the truth from the news, wanted to meet Jaden and me. Our first few meetings had been awkward and tense. Zoe was understandably angry, not at us, but at the father who had kept her a secret, who had paid for her existence like a bill he resented. She was hurt, confused, and desperate to understand who she really was. Jaden, to his credit, had reached out to her immediately. "She's my sister," he said simply when I questioned if it was too soon. "She's as much a victim in this as we are." Over the months, we had slowly, painfully built something resembling a relationship. There were arguments and tears, awkward silences and hard questions. But there was also laughter, shared discoveries, and the gradual realization that we were all connected now, bound by a truth that had finally come to light. "I made that pasta you like," I told Zoe as we moved to the kitchen, "with the spicy sausage." She smiled, a real smile, not the guarded one she'd worn in our early meetings. "Thanks, Patricia. That sounds great." We settled around my small kitchen table, the conversation flowing more easily than it once had. Jaden told us about his new landscape architecture business, which was finally gaining traction. Zoe shared her excitement about an upcoming science fair where her environmental project was a finalist. "I have news," Jaden said as we were finishing dessert. "I've been seeing someone." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh? Who is this mystery woman?" "Her name is Olivia. She's a librarian at the downtown branch. We met when I was researching native plants for that community garden project." His face softened. "She's kind and genuine, and she makes me laugh." After everything, that was what mattered most to me, that my son could still laugh, still love, still trust. The betrayal hadn't broken him. It had made him more cautious, perhaps, but not bitter. After dinner, Zoe helped me with the dishes while Jaden took a work call. "My mom told me to thank you," she said suddenly, her voice quiet. I looked at her, surprised. "Thank me? For what?" "For not hating us. For letting me be part of your life." She kept her eyes on the plate she was drying. She said most women would have blamed us too, seen us as part of the betrayal. I put down the pot I was scrubbing and turned to face her. "Zoe, look at me." She raised her eyes, so like her father's, yet filled with a gentleness he had never possessed. "What happened between your parents, between my husband and Savannah? That was their choice, their betrayal. You are an innocent in all of this. You didn't ask to be born into a web of lies." I hesitated, then added softly, "And your mother? She was young, vulnerable, manipulated by a man who had power over her. I don't hate her. I never did." Zoe's eyes filled with tears. "Sometimes I hate him," she whispered. "Is that terrible, to hate your own father?" I shook my head. "No, honey, it's human. He hurt you deeply. He denied you your true identity, your family. That anger is valid. He calls sometimes," she admitted. "Leaves messages saying he wants to explain, to make things right." "And do you want to hear his explanation?" She shrugged, looking young and uncertain. "I don't know. Maybe someday. Not now." I nodded, understanding perfectly. "Someday, when you're ready. No one can rush that for you." The doorbell rang again, interrupting our conversation. I frowned, not expecting any more visitors. "I'll get it," Jaden called from the living room. A moment later, he appeared in the kitchen doorway, his expression unreadable. "Mom, it's for you." I wiped my hands and walked to the door. Marcus stood on my doorstep. I hadn't seen him in nearly a year. He looked older, grayer, the confident arrogance gone from his bearing. He wore a simple button-down shirt and khakis, a far cry from the tailored suits he had once favored. "Patricia," he said, his voice hoarse. "May I come in?" I hesitated, acutely aware of Zoe and Jaden behind me. "Why are you here, Marcus?" "I needed to see you, to talk to you." His eyes moved past me, widening as he saw Zoe. And her. Zoe stepped forward, her body tense. "Hi, Dad," she said, the word sounding strange and formal on her lips. Marcus seemed to sag at the sound of her voice. "Zoe, you're here. I've been trying to reach you." "I know," she replied simply. An awkward silence fell. I could feel the weight of unsaid words, of years of lies and deception hanging in the air between us. Finally, I stepped aside. "You can come in, but only for a few minutes." We moved to the living room, the four of us forming a strange family tableau. Jaden sat beside Zoe on the sofa, his presence protective and solid. I took the armchair, leaving Marcus to stand uncomfortably in the center of the room. "I'm in therapy," he began without preamble, "trying to understand why I did the things I did, why I hurt the people I claimed to love." He looked directly at me. "I'm sorry, Patricia, for the lies, for the betrayal, for the pain I caused you and Jaden." He turned to Zoe. "And I'm sorry I denied you your rightful place in my life, that I treated you as a secret to be hidden away rather than a daughter to be proud of." His voice broke. "I know an apology isn't enough. Nothing I can say will erase 25 years of deceit. But I need you to know that I understand now what I've done, the damage I've caused." I studied him carefully, looking for signs of the old manipulation, the smooth charm that had once blinded me. But all I saw was a broken man facing the consequences of his actions. "I forgive you, Marcus," I said, surprising even myself with the words. "Not for you, but for me. I can't carry that anger anymore. It's too heavy." I looked him in the eye. "But I will never trust you again. We can never go back." He nodded, a sheen of tears in his eyes. "I know," he whispered. Zoe stood up, her hands trembling slightly. "I'm not ready to forgive you," she said, her voice steady despite her obvious emotion. "Maybe someday, but not today. Today I just want you to know that I'm okay, that despite everything, I'm building a life that's honest and real." Marcus looked at her with a mixture of sorrow and pride. "You deserve that. All of you do." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "The family I thought I was building, it was all based on lies. What you three have found, it's real. I hope you know how precious that is." After he left, we sat in silence for a long moment. Then Jaden reached out, taking my hand in one of his and Zoe's in the other. "Well," he said with a small smile, "that was unexpected." Zoe laughed, a short, startled sound. "Is it weird that I feel relieved?" I shook my head. "Not weird at all. Sometimes facing the thing you fear most is the only way to move beyond it." That night, as I got ready for bed, I found myself thinking about the woman I was a year ago, crouched in the dirt behind the hydrangeas, watching my life implode. She was so broken, so lost. I wished I could go back and tell her that everything would be okay, that the pain wasn't the end of the story. The family I thought I had was a lie. It had shattered into a million pieces on that sunny afternoon. But what Jaden, Zoe, and I had built in its place was smaller, quieter, and imperfect. But it was honest. It wasn't built on comfortable lies, but on a difficult, painful, and ultimately freeing truth. We had lost everything, but in doing so, we had found something real. And for the first time in a long, long time, that felt like enough.